Battle CD 31, DONPHAN Doldrums. Being too tough can be a problem. This is probably one of the most crowded battle CDs of them all. We have a full 6 versus 6 battle, and not many of these Pokemon will end up being used, which is kind of amusing. So we have this Donphan here with Earthquake. We have a Starmie with a decent moveset, a Blaziken with actually not terrible moves either, an Electrode with Explosion, which is kind of cool, Ninetales with some kind of weird support moves, but what can you really expect? Ninetales' move pool is pretty bad in Gen 3. And a Metagross. And on the opposing side, we have 6 Pokemon, all of which only have one terrible move each. However, these last 2 both have Protect. You want to be aware of that, because we only have 2 turns to knock out all 6 opposing Pokemon. Donphan versus everyone, and I do mean everyone. He's a terror even to his own team. So, leading with Magneton and Rhydon, both Pokemon weak to Earthquake, how this battle goes is pretty silly. But first, you need to make sure that Starmie attacks the right Pokemon. As tempting as it is for Starmie to attack Rhydon, this will knock Rhydon out in one hit. We actually don't want that. We want to make it so that the first 2 Pokemon on the opposing side are KO'd in this turn, then the next 2 Pokemon are sent out, and we KO them 2 at a time. That way we avoid the risk of Protect on the last 2. If we KO'd Rhydon now, we'd actually be knocking out 3 Pokemon this turn, and that would kind of desync things until they would end up using Protect on us. It'll make sense once we do it. So anyway, Donphan has to just Earthquake, while Starmie will Waterfall the Magneton, the one that should hopefully, if this isn't a critical, not fall to a single attack. And we don't care what the opponent uses. Actually, that animation looks pretty cool, the way that all 3 of the Magnemites line up like that. And here comes Donphan's first Earthquake. You know how there's that Dungeons & Dragons meme, rocks fall, everyone dies? Well, this is ground splits, everyone dies. Because yes, Donphan's Earthquake knocks out everyone on the field, even its own allies. Now, for this one, we have to send out Metagross here. It is actually the only option. Because now, Hiplog, which is a really stupid name, is sending out Manectric, we send out Metagross, and he's also sending out Magcargo. It's a good thing he's using a lot of Pokemon that are weak to Earthquake. So, Donphan Earthquakes again, and Metagross also Earthquakes. We don't need to worry about what moves they use. Because Metagross is faster, its Earthquake will go off first, and this should knock out both opposing Pokemon just in time for the next 2 to come in, and for Donphan's Earthquake to finish them off. So, there goes Manectric, there goes Magcargo, and thanks to 3rd gen switch mechanics, this is another battle CD that wouldn't work in a later generation, the remaining 2 Pokemon both come in during turn 2 while the Earthquake is about to go off. That way, Earthquake goes off before they can Protect. Like I said, if you KO the Rhydon on the first turn, you eventually reduce things to the point where one of them will always Protect, and then you won't win in 2 turns. Also, bye-bye Metagross. Yep, Donphan is a terror even to his own team. He's kind of a team killer. But there goes everything. And thus we win. We still have some Pokemon left on our side though. But that was kind of a massacre. Donphan just knocked out 8 Pokemon in the space of 2 turns. Didn't even have a choice band or anything. Actually, Donphan itself only knocked out 6, Metagross took care of another 2. For completing that, we get a full restore, actually not a bad reward. Since I'm losing this CD on purpose to show the hit, I'll just show what happens if you take out the Rhydon on the first turn, even though it seems like the most obvious option. Manectric ends up getting sent out. Donphan's Earthquake still KOs everyone on the field. But as you can see, Aggron has now already been sent out, which means, well, you'll see in a moment, Aggron is going to protect this turn. And with that, you can't make the turn limits. So the advice here is, this is actually pretty helpful, though it does spoil which of the Pokemon you need to send out after Starmie faints. This battle CD teaches that Earthquake can be dangerous to your allies in a double battle. It's a very strong move, hitting both opponents, but it does come at the risk of hitting your partner as well. And this is another reason why Protect is such a good move in doubles. Not only does it shield a Pokemon from opposing attacks for one turn, it also means your ally can use Earthquake without fear of team kills. None of the Pokemon on your side in this battle CD have Protect, and so Donphan destroys everyone, friend and foe alike. A secondary lesson here is that due to the way switching works in Gen 3 double battles, it's possible to KO up to 4 opposing Pokemon in a single turn. Well, yeah, you can KO 6 Shedinjas in one turn, but most Pokemon aren't Shedinja. You're usually limited to 4. If one Pokemon uses a spread move and knocks out both opponents, and the second Pokemon also uses a spread move, in Gen 3 fainted Pokemon are replaced before the second spread move goes off. You can see this with the last turn in this battle. Both Metagross and Donphan used Earthquake, and together they knocked out 4 opposing Pokemon in one turn. There's only been one major change to Earthquake over the generations. Starting in Generation 6, it does half damage while grassy terrain is active. But the biggest change that affects this battle CD is, once again, changes to the way fainted Pokemon are replaced in double battles. Starting in Generation 4, you cannot knock out 4 Pokemon in the space of a single turn, usually. How the second turn would have gone in later generations is that Metagross's Earthquake would have worked and KO'd both opposing Pokemon. However, those Pokemon wouldn't have been replaced until the end of the turn, so Donphan's Earthquake would have only hit Metagross. Any hits from it on the opposing side of the field fail due to there being no targets. This battle city is actually a special one. As you can see by the next battle city's difficulty being a big dash, this is the last of the puzzle-based battle CDs. The rest are all themed battles. But, firstly, we have this one, Survive Big Booms, yet another explosion-based battle CD. How will you take out the SHUCKLE? So this is kind of a weird one. We have 4 Pokemon here all level 50, and we're against 4 opposing Pokemon, including a level 60 Gengar. We have a Linoon that can't really do much, and Alakazam that, well, actually it's got some alright moves. Trick here is a bit of a red herring though. Dusclops with some okay moves, Aggron with a pretty strange moveset, and we're up against a Gengar that has Explosion and Protect, an Electrode that has Self-Destruct, a Shedinja, and a SHUCKLE. We also only have 5 turns. So, there are 2 dilemmas that we need to solve here. The first is that we're probably not going to take out the SHUCKLE in 5 turns unless we make very clever use of a certain move. The second is that none of our Pokemon have any moves that can naturally hit Shedinja, so we need to figure out a way around that too. So, how shall we take out the SHUCKLE? And the Shedinja for that matter. So, here are 2 exploding Pokemon coming out immediately, and for this CD, you kind of need to know how the AI works. So our first 2 Pokemon are Linoon and Alakazam. The AI always blows up Electrode on the first turn. Also, Gengar always protects, so we don't want to try and attack the Gengar. We actually want to switch out Linoon on turn 1. We could do a double protect here, but it's actually better to switch out for Dusclops. Alakazam, though, Alakazam has to protect. Linoon, sadly, doesn't have much to do in this battle, which is kind of a shame. I like Linoon, and I kind of wish they'd done something involving covers. The Gengar does have a Silk Scarf, but there's no way we can steal it because it's going to use, Oh, right, actually, Gengar protects on the second turn. There's no real difference in my strategy regardless. So Electrode goes down. And I still love the way that it explodes and then there's just that silence as the explosion has no effect on everyone. Oh yeah, so Gengar tries to mean look on the first turn. This turn, Gengar protects. Now, with Dusclops, what we want to do is... really doesn't matter what we do, but Imprison is, I guess, kind of a nice option. Shedinja usually likes to take out Alakazam on this turn, and we want to let that happen. So, this is another thing that's kind of bizarre. So yeah, we actually do need to let Shedinja KO Alakazam here, and Shedinja will almost always go for it, so you don't need to worry too much. With Alakazam down, we send in Aggron. Like I said, Linoon doesn't have much to do with this battle CD. Meanwhile, we seal them out of using Protect, which doesn't really matter because Gengar explodes on turn 3 anyway. And we actually want Gengar to explode, because we need to make use of that explosion for something. There is actually a problem here though. This turn relies on Shedinja targeting Dusclops. Now, Shedinja usually targets Dusclops, but I swear in at least one of my attempts I've seen it target Aggron. If Shedinja targets Aggron this turn, the entire strategy for this CD is ruined and we can't win. So that's kind of annoying. What we need to do here is we need to use Counter. Now, Counter doesn't actually select a target. The way it works in Double Battles is, Counter is always aimed at the slot of whatever Pokemon last hit you with a physical move. This is why we actually don't want Shedinja to attack Aggron, because if it does, Aggron ends up countering Shadow Ball into Shedinja's slot, and Shedinja is immune to counter due to Wonder Guard. But, if Aggron uses Counter and it successfully counters Gengar's explosion, what happens? Because Gengar's slot is now empty thanks to Gengar exploding. You'll see. And I still love this. Nothing. Well, that did something. And... nothing. So Gengar goes down, moment of truth time, Shedinja has to attack Dusclops for this to work. Because there's SHUCKLE. Good, it attacked Dusclops. That's all we needed, because now Counter is going to go into Gengar's former slot, which is now occupied by SHUCKLE, thus KOing SHUCKLE because we're countering the massive explosion damage. And here's where we need to pull off something else that's interesting. So, it doesn't really matter what Dusclops does here. Dusclops can go for a double protect if it wants to, actually. But Aggron just needs to aim Mimic at Shedinja. You see what we're doing here. We have until next turn to knock out the Shedinja, but none of our Pokemon can hurt it. Unless we use Mimic. Because now, regardless of whether Shedinja's Mimic regardless of whether Shedinja's Shadow Ball succeeds or fails, just thinking about the Shedinja Eradicate CD for a second there, Aggron has now Mimic Shadow Ball and now has a way of damaging Shedinja. So, again, it doesn't matter what Dusclops does, Aggron has to just Shadow Ball the Shedinja. Dusclops might end up fainting at some point on one of these turns. Oh, you could also just switch out for Linoon and completely null the Shadow Ball. That's probably a better option. But regardless of what happens, Aggron Shadow Balls Shedinja, and it's over. Kind of a weird battle CD, but it's also kind of fun when you figure out the right strategy. Also shows some pretty obscure aspects of Counter, at least in Generation 3. Yeah, this is another one that wouldn't have worked under later generation double battle switching mechanics. So, for completing that battle CD, what do we get? A Revive. That's not really that bad either. So what advice do we get here? That pretty much spells out how we have to defeat the SHUCKLE, but it doesn't specifically tell us what we need to counter, so at least it leaves that open. This battle CD is another one of those that's more concerned with providing a puzzle to solve than actually teaching you anything. We learned here that Counter works on self-destruct and explosion, but in practice this isn't very useful outside of Gen 1 and Gen 3. Gen 1, because in that generation Counter can counter damage dealt to a substitute, and in Gen 1, self-destruct and explosion don't KO you if they break a substitute, so Counter from behind a sub is a good measure against those moves. In Gen 3, this is occasionally useful thanks to, again, double battle switching mechanics. The exploding Pokemon will be replaced immediately, and provided the user of Counter survives the self-destruct or explosion, which is usually only possible by something like Aggron that has a massive resistance, Counter will hit the Pokemon that next comes in and will almost always KO them. I guess while we're here, another fun fact about Counter is that before Generation 4, it could always counter Hidden Power, regardless of what type it actually was. This is because Hidden Power was always considered to be normal type for the purposes of the move Counter. What's changed here is exactly the same as the previous battle CD, changes to how fainted Pokemon are replaced in dull battles, mean that this solution would not work in future generations. There, Counter in this situation would just fail from having no targets. This change to dull battling mechanics has affected a lot of these battle CDs, hasn't it? And I guess since this is the last puzzle battle CD, I should give my thoughts on it. I personally like this change overall. While it is fun to work strategies around dull battle switching mechanics in Gen 3, it is a little unfair to have a Pokemon sent out to replace a fainted Pokemon and then be immediately knocked out before it even gets a chance to select a move. Being the first generation with dull battles, it makes sense that a few of the details weren't fully figured out back then, and they realised what worked and what didn't and refined the mechanic for later generations. Battle CD 33, Cutie Pokemon Concerto Side A, a frolicking battle with cute Pokemon. This is the point where the battle CDs stop being puzzles and start being more just general themed battles. Unlike a lot of the earlier ones, there's no real lesson that they teach you, and there are multiple different paths to victory rather than just one. So these are very, very open-ended, and you can really use whatever tactics you think will work. I'll just be showing what works for me personally. I'll also be trying to win this battle without losing any Pokemon, just because, you know, that's more of a challenge that way. I probably won't be able to keep that up because some of the later theme battles are incredibly brutal. But anyway, for this one, we have the Johto starters, or their base forms at level 5, versus 3 Johto babies, also at level 5. So this plays out very similarly to a Little Cup battle. You've got Pokemon at their lowest evolutionary stage and all at level 5. So here you can get a bit of a feel for the moves we're dealing with. As you can see here though, all of these Pokemon hold items that boost the power of their snap attacks, so you'll need to watch out for that. On our side though, Chikorita has one of the most broken Little Cup items of all time. I'll be talking about that once we get into it. Cyndaquil has a scope lens, which is probably not going to help us unless we're really lucky, and Totodile has, again, an item that won't really help us unless we're lucky. So let's do this! These Pokemon are all very cute. Watch them solo on this flute. So, the opponent here leads with Smoochum, and we have Chikorita in our first spot. Now, there's a bit of a problem here. Smoochum always leads with Fake Out, so if we have Chikorita stay in, we're losing our first turn guaranteed. Or we can switch out to Cyndaquil and try and take it out with fire moves, but Cyndaquil will also lose a little bit of HP. So, like I said, these battles are very open-ended. You can really do whatever tactics you think will work. What I like doing personally is I like to use Light Screen against the Smoochum. But this means I'm giving up my first turn because Smoochum will always go for Fake Out. And thus we always flinch. Now, Smoochum's confusion is very, very powerful. It's probably the biggest threat in this battle. That damage might not look that impressive for a, but it's pretty impressive for a level 5. There's Light Screen though, and there is the stupidly overpowered Citrus Berry. Here I like to use Ancient Power against the Smoochum. Let's just try and go for that. If Chikorita gets confused, I'll have to switch out though. But yeah, Citrus Berry. In Gen 3, Citrus Berry always heals 30 HP. It's not percentage based, which means that in Little Cup, Citrus Berry is pretty much a guaranteed full heal. Yeah. I was researching on the internet, and I can't find any word of Smogon banning Citrus Berry in Gen 3 Little Cup. They only talk about how Citrus Berry isn't worth it in any future generations of Little Cup because, yeah, it's percentage based, which is terrible for level 5 Pokemon. Oran Berry always outclasses it there. But considering that Smogon banned Berry Juice for a while in Gen 5 Little Cup, which restores a guaranteed 20 HP, I'm sure they would have banned Citrus Berry in Gen 3 Little Cup, because seriously, 30 HP recovery for Little Cup, very few Pokemon are going to have more than that. Especially since there's no Happiny in this generation, so I actually think Chikorita should stay in here. Yeah, let's go for... Actually, I can try and heal up with Synthesis. Let's see what happens. Rolling Kick. A move you don't really see all that often. I think that has a chance of flinching, if I remember right. Again, it's not a move you see often, so I kind of forget its effects. Used to be Hitmonlee's signature move, though. Chikorita can tank for a little bit with Synthesis. But anyway, what I was saying about the Citrus Berry and things like that... Oh, yeah, well, that proves that. And there goes my light screen. I'll try and go for one more heal. There's Rolling Kick again. I suppose I can try and hit it with one Razor Leaf. Cyndaquil is usually better equipped to taking out the Ellie. Well, now I'm definitely switching to Cyndaquil. Yep, screw that, sorry. That is just flinching me way too much. But yeah, there are certain items that are considered overpowered in the Little Cup sometimes that usually get banned. Also, Dragon Rage and Sonic Boom are almost always banned because they're pretty much a guaranteed 1-hit KO on anything in Little Cup. And obviously, Pokemon like Scyther and in Gen 3, Chansey, because Happiny didn't exist, they're usually banned too. As of Gen 4, things like Misdreavus, Murkrow, Yanma, Tangela, they're all kind of powerful. Dig plus Quick Attack is usually enough to see off the Elekid. And all that's left is the Magby, which is also a pretty good matchup for Cyndaquil. Or we could even use Totodile. So I'm in a pretty good spot here. Oh, well, not anymore thanks to that static. Okay, I'm going to try and get one Dig off, but if I don't, it's not the end of the world. Also, wow, Seismic Toss at level 5, that's a great move. 5 guaranteed damage. The only thing about being paralyzed with Dig is that you have 2 chances of being fully paralyzed, but didn't get either of them, which is kind of nice. Maybe I could Quick Attack you to finish you off. Now your light screen is gone, which doesn't matter because, I only used one special move for this entire battle, so... wasn't really all that useful for you. Didn't even need to use Totodile, wow, that went pretty well. Like I said, though, these battles are very open-ended, so use whatever tactics you want. Personally, I like Chikorita's light screen, I like having Chikorita fight Smoochum, Cyndaquil fighting Elekid, and either Cyndaquil or Totodile fighting Magby. So for completing that, we get a Nugget. That's actually a pretty good reward. Also, there is an additional reward. You might have noticed that there wasn't a Battle CD 34 on our list before. Because when you clear Battle CD 33, we can play the B-side. So, there are quite a few extra Battle CDs that are like this. From here on, we'll be seeing a lot of them. So, completing Side A unlocks Cutie Pokemon Concerto Side B, but before we do that, let's see what the advice is for this one. Really? That's the only advice you have? Really? I guess it fits with this CD being very open-ended. Some of these matchups have more specific tactics that they will advise you to use, but this one is pretty much your introduction to the theme battles. So let's turn the tables with Cutie Pokemon Concerto Side B. This one reverses the sides. We're now controlling what I like to call Team Babies against Team Johto. Usually Side B is more difficult than Side A, and often you'll want to check the movesets because sometimes they change them. But often they add a lot of artificial difficulty to the Side Bs, like this. You might notice something. Team Baby no longer has their items, whereas Team Johto still has theirs, including Chikorita's Citrus Berry, and Cyndaquil and Totodile's luck-based items. So, this is gonna be annoying. Very annoying. Okay, first up, Chikorita. Chikorita is basically the boss Pokemon of this batch. It has its Citrus Berry, it can heal with Synthesis, and it can also potentially boost its stats with Ancient Power, and it has great matchups against 2 of your Pokemon, including one that it's supposed to be weak to. So, if you get rid of Chikorita, that's really the first step here. So, I like to get my free damage in with Fake Out, and then immediately switch out to Elekid. Elekid is the Pokemon that has the best matchup against Chikorita here, but it's really more because it's the only Pokemon that doesn't have a bad matchup against Chikorita. Also, Ancient Power is contact in Generation 3, so it can trigger static, and you kind of need to pray for that to happen. Okay, that's good. Static is very, very helpful, because now we can try and power flinch it. I don't like going for Light Screen, because that encourages Chikorita to keep spamming Ancient Power, which gives it more chance of a boost. I find power flinching Chikorita with Elekid is probably the best way to beat it. Okay, that's luck, but I will take that. Because I've lost this Battle City twice due to luck on my opponent's end, so yes, this is fitting. Okay, Cyndaquil, you have Dig, you have Quick Attack. My Protect renders your Dig useless, actually, but let's first see if I'm faster than you. Well, looks like I am here. Probably should have checked the speeds better, because I now know from experience that this Cyndaquil is Speed type with Smoochum, which can actually be pretty bad. Okay, my Protect renders your Dig useless, like I said, so I don't need to worry about this Cyndaquil very much. If you lose Elekid before Cyndaquil comes out, and you're very, very likely to, I feel like Smoochum can help, but again, it's a speed tie, and Magby, you sometimes have to rely on Double Team, which is really not a good thing to rely on. Also, be aware that Cyndaquil does have the Scope Lens, so it's likely to crit you quite a bit. And any crits at this stage is usually a 1-hit KO because our stats are just so low. Okay, Totodile. Elekid has a pretty good matchup against Totodile. I'm not really worried here. In fact, Elekid's probably the best Pokemon out of these three, although Smoochum's not bad. Okay, I got stupidly lucky there. I will take that because you're about to see 2 failed attempts at this that I lost due to horrendous luck, so it kind of balances out. Unfortunately, the Side B Battle Cities usually come down to luck thanks to all the artificial difficulty they put in to make it harder for you. Because, yeah, getting around that Chikorita is extremely difficult without a lot of luck. So, what do we win from that? We get a Nugget. So, 2 Nuggets out of that, so pretty nice. Okay, I haven't activated your Citrus Berry yet, but there's really no way I can do this without activating the Citrus Berry, unfortunately. Going for Ancient Power here. Ow, yeah. Oh, of course, that would happen. I don't think I can win this now. I'm going to try, but I probably won't win this. Ancient Power again. Okay, then. And this is why Magby is often a bad idea against Chikorita. Can Smoochum beat everything? At this HP threshold, probably not. At least I took down Chikorita. Smoochum is definitely not beating Cyndaquil, though. Totodile also has Bite, so yeah, not winning this. I think I have a plan for how to next approach this, though. What? Well, I mean, you could go for a Quick Attack next turn. That is kind of worrying. Nope, just... I guess we're Speed-tied, then. Okay, then. That's actually not good, because you're at +1 attack. And if I switch Magby in, I could potentially get... I don't like this, I don't like this. You're winning. What's that? And you get a crit! Well, shouldn't be surprised because you have a Scope Lens, but still. Oh, I don't want to have to do this, but I think I have to. Thought you'd be doing that. At least I can get 2 of these in before we come up from Dig. Well, that at least happened. Let's go for a Seismic Toss. I really hate having to rely on evasion, but it might be my only option here. Well, digging again. Nothing to do but go for another double team. And so yeah, this is why... Wow, really? This is why I still think the double team is a terrible move, because all your turns of setting it up are rendered useless if your opponent simply gets lucky. That's why I feel like even in formats where double team isn't banned, or just evasion in general, it's still not a good tactic to use in my opinion. I mean, I guess what I said could apply to defense stat buffs with critical hits, but usually the chances of them hitting through evasion is greater than the chance of them getting a critical hit. Is there any helpful advice for this one? Really?